So we are running a series, Jeff, as you know, where we're running through Ohio State's opponents. So week 2, the Red Wolves come to Columbus. And we know a few pretty prominent players from the Power 5 level are in play here when we talk about Butch Jones, of course, formerly of Tennessee, the current head coach at Arkansas State, and James Blackman, I believe, is going to be your quarterback this season. So give us a take on Arkansas State coming off a rough 2-10 year.
Yeah, it was it was a rough season. I think a lot of it was the fact that the roster had gotten talent wise to a very, very low position. What it's been in the previous years, they'd just come up a run where they'd had like 9 straight bowl games and like 5 or 6 conference championships, and it started to fall off in 20. They went 21. They went 4-7, and then last year was 2-10, and it was. And I talked to Butch, and he basically said that he knew the situation was getting lean with talent, but he got here and found out it was worse than what he thought it was. And then you still had, most of the roster were Blake Anderson guys, and he brought in some new guys, and so things didn't quite mesh there. And they did win 2 games, and basically it started off horrible. I mean, they were just getting mashed every week, and they played a lot better down the stretch, had a chance to win 3 games that they didn't, but they could have easily have won those if they'd gotten better quarterback play. And then, of course, if they're 5-7, everybody's not thinking quite so bad, but 2-10 looks bad. I know Butch was embarrassed, and they have brought in a lot of talent, and they're expecting a pretty good turnaround this year.
I was looking, and I don't know if anything had moved forward on it, but former Ohio State running back Brian Snead had taken some visits to Arkansas State, or a visit to Arkansas State. I looked, and there Arkansas State was 128th in the nation last year running the ball, 82.4 yards per game. Is there any news on whether or not that's somebody that they're going to be able to pursue and bring in, and how are they going to obviously improve an aspect of the game that was just dismal last year?
Well, obviously, as we all know, if you want to run the ball, you got to have the horses up front that's gonna block and make the holes for it. That would make any of them better running backs. Brian is a guy that's on the radar, and I think is in the process of trying to get clearance to get into school. And if he does, he will be a welcome addition to the running back room. It's they've got a transfer from Iowa State in there who's not bad, and the running back room, they got a couple of really good. They got a kid that transferred in from Purdue. His name is Jaquez Cross. He's an Arkansas guy. And they got a good freshman out of Alabama that they're real high on. But Snead would be a definite addition to it, and somebody that makes that room better. But they're really working on the offensive line. It's already better than it was last year, but they're trying to get a couple more guys that they can add before the season starts in August. They really worked the portal hard, but if you follow the portal very much at all, offensive linemen have been at a premium, and not so much that the P5s are looking for starters. It's just they're looking for depth, quality depth to improve their chances. So we'll see what happens there. I think Snead will wind up on campus. I really do. But it's not set yet, and they're bringing in offensive linemen, and then they'll be working up to August 1 on that. As Butch says, the roster is always evolving.
And you look at the quick turnaround he had at Cincinnati. Like, I think Arkansas State had 5 losses by a score or less, by 1 score last year. That can be spun in a positive direction, that you were so close, and the coach Butch Jones can tell his players, like, look how close you were. And is that part of the message? Like, you guys, you are not 2-10. You're better than that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the roster has evolved. There's probably like about 25 guys who are here when Butch first arrived. So there's been a major makeover there. They've gotten a lot of They feel more talented type guys. One thing that helps is the schedule changes. Uh, the first 5 weeks of the season, they opened with Central Arkansas at home, and they won that game. But then they had Memphis at home. They lost that. They went to a good Tulsa and lost that. Then they had to make a trip to Washington. And even though the Huskies weren't bad, it's a long trip, and they had to come back. They got back from that, and then they had to open conference play on a Thursday in South Georgia. I mean, Butch was, he said, who made this schedule, because there was obviously the non-conference were there for a long time, but the conference games were already, they weren't that, but it still was not a good break having to go from Washington, cross 2 time zones and all that hours of flight, and then come home, get home late Monday, and then you got to turn around and go to Georgia on a Wednesday. I mean, it was not a lot of prep time on that. And like I said, after that, the schedule, then they had Coastal Carolina came in and App State, and they're both were really good for this level. And after that, the schedule kind of softened, and they started playing better, and they had a chance to win some games. But the schedule is a lot more favorable this time, and with new players, and they're more accustomed to what. And it was still a learning process. Even though he was here in spring practice, there were still guys who were added in the summer and things like that. Like James Blackman, the starting quarterback, who was a transfer from Florida State, he didn't get here till July, so, and he didn't have a lot of time to get ready. Everybody knows what's expected, and they know the game plan, and they know the plays. And I think all that lends itself that there could be a lot better season. I think there could be anywhere from 5 to 8 wins this year.
Jeff, considering, go ahead, guys.
I was going to say, I'm looking at the last 3 games of the schedule. They beat Louisiana Monroe by 3, and then they lose to Georgia State by 8 and Texas State by 2. Is that a matter of just who the opponents were, or was the light bulb starting to go on? And even, and it's a far cry from, losing by 32 to Coastal and losing by 18 to South Alabama. I mean, is that something that they're going to be able to build upon, or was that just a matter of Monroe, Georgia State, and Texas State? I mean, because I don't follow the Sun Belt that closely, just being not very good.
Yeah, I think that obviously the talent dropped off from some of the early games. Now, the South Alabama game, which they lost by 18, they were in that game, and they threw 3 interceptions, and they just were turnover plagued that day. Texas State was not a very good team. It's a game that they should have won. They actually were kicking for a field goal, although it was pretty much almost 50 yards into a strong win. It was the only chance they had on the last play to win it. The talent, though, in Georgia State was a good team, went to a bowl game. Now, we're not talking Ohio State, Alabama good. I mean, but for this level, they went to a bowl game. They're not bad. And, they were in those games. Like I said, they started to turn things around toward the late end of the season. And in this day of time, defensively, if you hold somebody under 30 or 28, then you should have a chance to win, because the game is so offensive oriented now.
Hey, Jeff, we appreciate you being here. I just have one last question, unless Tony and Kevin have anything else. Considering the success that you alluded to off the top, Blake Anderson, I think, shared or had outright 5 consecutive Sun Belt championships there. We're just talking in the last decade. And of course, he moved on, and a lot of people know his story, unfortunately, concerning his wife and so forth. But, what's the feel, the vibe? What are the expectations in the region, in the area there in Jonesboro, concerning Arkansas State football, and how much time they'll give Butch Jones and versus demanding more immediate success?
Yeah, I think people expect to see improvement this year, no doubt about it. I think there was a lot of disgruntled people last year because of the way things were going. And I actually tweeted out one time, hey, people, this team was 2-6 in the Sun Belt last year. It's not like it's been that much of a fall off. They kind of forget. They had the big win at Kansas State during the early part of the COVID, where I don't know if Kansas State, how many players they were missing, but they were missing quite a bit. But there's a receiver here named Jonathan Adams who was really good. And if you follow the USFL right now, he's playing and making great plays for New Orleans team. He's just an acrobatic type guy that really is good along the goal line because he's 6'3", he can jump, and he can grab those balls there. But I think expectations, I don't know if many people are expecting a winning season. Like I said, I think they could go anywhere from 5 wins to 8 wins. But I think expectations, they want to see improvement for sure.